My breath did that small step back inside my chest, the body's way of making space for something older than oxygen. The nurse stopped in the doorway, measuring the fact of us, and then entered with the exact courage of a person who knows both why she came and why she's late to it. Everly came in without announcing himself, which is a trick only honest power can pull. He sat. He did not ask for a preface. He looked at the clock once, then at us, then at the folder as if it had volunteered for a difficult job and needed thanks later. "Motions on temporary guardianship and emergency orders," he said, voice like a carpenter's plane, clean, unflustered. "One side says safety, the other says daylight. I'll hear daylight first." Sam rose. Some men perform. Sam arranges air. He laid out the bones. Dr. Patel's capacity letter, Carter's presence and APS notation of no emergency action, the $10 test and the hold that caught the hand, the email from Maddox and Price, the photograph delivered with the kind of theatrical timing judges do not admire. He didn't use adjectives where nouns would do the work. He let the dates carry their own weight. "Mr. Hale is oriented, decisive, and aware," he finished. "He has been the target of a coordinated financial redirection disguised as guardianship. He requests the court's protection from the protection being offered." Cole stood as if the floor owed him that height. "Your Honor, we all adore Mr. Hale," he began, and it took some restraint not to laugh. "This is a family aligning resources. Pine Ark and Whitaker family are standard consolidation paths. Clean, philanthropic, tax advantageous. We have a temporary guardianship petition as a bridge. Paperwork, really. To ease Mr. Hale's administrative burden. The photograph, regrettable timing, I agree, pertains to sensitive lineage disclosures that impact beneficiary clarity. We are preempting confusion, not creating it." "Why?" Everly asked. "Does this require speed?" He didn't blink when he said it. He doesn't blink when speed is in the room. Cole smoothed his tie. "Markets, health. You know how winter catches us unawares." "Winter," Everly repeated, and the word sounded like it had tried to fool him once and failed. Whitaker stood a half-inch into Cole's pause, his hands steepled because of course they were. "Your Honor, I shepherd many families through these later chapters. Brother David, Mr. Hale, has been a pillar. Pillars deserve scaffolding when weather comes." Everly glanced at Carter. "APS?" Carter stood without rustle. Capacity letter in hand. No emergency on file. Pattern observed in similarly situated families. Religiously framed urgency, guardianship as a lever, donor-advised funds as a veil. We prefer people who are well to sign for themselves on days they are well. Everly nodded. He turned to me. "Mr. Hale, I'd like to hear from you. Not what happened, I've got that, but what you understand yourself to be doing here." I stood. Old men earn the right to let their hands show they're old. I didn't smooth anything. "I am here to keep the bolts tight," I said. "I'm here because my daughter has been tutored to think that love is a signature you obtain when someone looks tired. I am tired. I am not confused. I want my money to do what I promised it would do when I was young and arrogant and building bridges. Carry weight honestly. If that takes guardianship one day, I will ask for it. Not today. Not as a backdoor into someone else's need." You could feel the room decide what it thought. It's a physical thing, like a beam settling. Everly nodded again. Once. "That will do." He looked at the nurse. "And you are?" She stepped forward, voice thread-thin but intact. "Marla Dean, Your Honor. I was on L&D the night Jessica was born. Mrs. Hale gave me that envelope 2 weeks later with instructions to deliver if—" She swallowed the next word. If memory failed her, or if pressure found him. Pressure. I looked at Eleanor's handwriting and saw the two of us in the little kitchen. The kettle not yet singing. Her eyes fixed on the middle distance where truth often stands to steady itself. "Why now?" Everly asked, not unkindly. "Pastor Whitaker found me yesterday," she said, hands tighter now. "He asked me to come say things I didn't want to say in a way I didn't want to say them. I went home and found the envelope. I decided I was late enough." Whitaker's mouth shaped surprise. He is good at shaping. Everly took the envelope and weighed it the way judges weigh paper and plumbers weigh wrenches. He didn't open it. He placed it on the blotter between us all like a small, polite animal. "We will inventory this if necessary," he said. "But my sense is the living witnesses and the current behavior are sufficient for today." Cole shifted, his smile trying new math. "Your Honor, with respect, the lineage in that envelope may—" "Counselor," Everly interrupted, "we are not adjudicating who someone's father was 37 years ago. We are deciding whether someone's daughter should be his father today." Silence had the good grace to be silent. Everly lifted his pen. "Here is the order. Temporary guardianship petition denied. Any further ex parte efforts in this matter will draw sanctions heavy enough to leave marks. Funds under Mr. Hale's name are to be encumbered from transfer, absent his direct consent, and a seconder who is not a beneficiary of any proposed consolidation. APS memo to be attached. Mr. Hale's counsel is directed to propose a narrow protective order around the photograph and any derivative materials. I intend to keep family privacy where the law permits me to." He signed. The sound was not dramatic. Important sounds rarely are. Whitaker tried one more time, a soft pastoral lilt aimed like a scalpel. "Your Honor, might we at least appoint a neutral co-fiduciary to spare Brother David, Mr. Hale, the indignity of clerical fatigue?" Everly looked at me. "Do you want sparing, Mr. Hale?" "I want an honest ledger and my daughter back," I said. "The rest is paperwork." "Good answer," he said. "Request denied without prejudice. If fatigue arrives, Mr. Hale will know the door." Carter's breath released. Chloe's pen finished a sentence and underlined it. Sam gathered the signed order the way you lift a newborn. Sure, careful, convinced of function. We stood. Whitaker's eyes found Jessica. He offered a pastor's nod, the one that says, "I can still make this easier, if you let me call it grace." Jessica returned something small and unreadable. Tom stared at the carpet and saw a future that didn't include his favorite shortcuts. As we turned to go, Everly tapped the envelope once with the back of his pen. "Mr. Hale," he said, "this is yours, more than it is mine. Would you like me to retain it, or will you take custody and decide at your kitchen table where so much seems to be decided?" I looked at Eleanor's handwriting, at the way the E still leaned forward like a person catching a child on a slide. "My table," I said, "with witnesses." Everly slid it across. The paper made that small, dignified whisper that says, "Be careful." We left chambers, and the courthouse light replaced the chamber light. Harsher, more public, the kind that shows you your reflection in glass doors and asks if you know the man blinking back. In the hallway, Marla touched my sleeve. "I'm sorry," she said, "for the lateness." "You're on time," I answered. We measure differently here. Carter peeled off to file the APS memo with a signature thick enough to impress concrete. Sam walked ahead to arrange the copy that would be our shield this afternoon. Chloe slipped the order into a sleeve that could survive weather. I held the envelope at my side. It felt heavier than paper, lighter than guilt. Outside on the steps, Whitaker waited, because of course he did. Some men don't know how to leave until someone writes it on a door. He lifted his hand in a wave that auditioned for benevolence. "Brother David," he called, "my line is open when you want gentleness." "Gentleness," I said, "learns to wait its turn." We crossed the square. Pigeons did the city's ancient arithmetic. Jessica walked beside me, not touching my arm, and not touching it. Tom hung back, accounting for a future that refused to be a spreadsheet. At the curb, Sam's car glinted like a promise we could keep. I slid into the passenger seat with the envelope on my lap, like a map no one else could read. Back at my kitchen table, the house leaned in like a good listener. The envelope felt soft from years of waiting. I slid a butter knife under the flap the way a surgeon draws a first line and lifted. Paper breathed. Eleanor's handwriting met me. Square, impatient, honest as a ruler. David, if I forget where I put the truth, here is where you can find it. Do not be brave in the wrong direction. Be exact. There were numbers, then names, then the smallest sketch of a key shape like a child's drawing of a door. Union Federal, Maple and 3rd, Box 1973. Key taped below. Clerk will ask for the passphrase. Say, wait travels safely. If anyone waves a temporary order at you, bring Carter or her successor from APS and have them watch the signature log. Yes, I know you'll roll your eyes at me naming APS. Do it anyway. List of hands. C. Maddox. Don't sign anything he prepares for your convenience. W. Whitaker. We'll call urgency a fruit and kindness a rope. M. Dean. If you need a witness who remembers the night Jessica was born. J. Hale. Tell her the whole truth you owe her, not the quiet love you hide in chores. What's inside the box? One ledger from Caleb, written because he could not carry secrets without spilling. A letter for you. A letter for Jessica. A writer he signed 3 months before he died, witnessed by someone who doesn't scare. If a pastor tells you it isn't valid, ask the judge who taught him the word valid. Forgive, but count out loud while you do it. Beneath the last line, taped flat as a pressed leaf, lay the key. Brass worn smooth where a thumb loves to rest. I knew that key's posture. Years ago, on a porch that has since been painted over, my brother pressed a matching one into my hand and asked for a forgiveness I couldn't name yet. In case, he'd said, shrugging like a boy who has broken a window and hopes the wind will take the fault. I set the key in my palm and felt time do the thing it does with metal. Make it warm and truthful. Read it to me, Jessica said quietly. She had sat closer without my noticing, her chair angled toward the table's geography the way a dancer angles toward light. I read. When I reached J. Hale, tell her the whole truth. She breathed out through her nose, a small, precise acceptance that arrived unarmed. What's the writer? She asked. Paper that changes paper, Sam said, already dialing a number with his thumb. Amendment, codicil, power of appointment. If Caleb named conditions, they'll be there. If Whitaker and Maddox have been leaning on that language, they'll want to keep it foggy. Chloe slid her laptop aside and leaned on her forearms, elbows on wood the way a friend does in a kitchen. Union Federal opens at 10. If we leave now, we're first at the vault. Carter? I'll call ahead, Carter said, opening her folder like a bird testing the air. Have the branch manager pull the signature card and box log. No one opens without the man whose name matches the bones in that ledger. I lifted the key. It made a small chiming sound against the ring of my house keys, a new note joining old ones. Metal has a way of teaching you. It means business. Dad, Jessica said, eyes on the list of names, finger stopping at hers. Did Mom write this when she was... She didn't finish the sentence. Some nouns don't belong in a mouth before lunch. Early, I said. I can hear the old her in the bossy parts. I tapped the last line. The mercy parts are later. She smiled, a brief, clean exposure. Then she squared herself. I want to go with you. Good, I said. Bring the bracelet if you want to hate it together in the car. She touched it unconsciously, then unclasped and slipped it into her pocket. A small private war won in silence. We gathered. I slid Eleanor's note into a clear sleeve and taped the torn envelope back to it like a dress's hem mended for one more dance. The kitchen smelled faintly of lemon and mint and paper. my favorite trinity. On the way out, the phone chirped with a new email. Subject: Vault Protocol Reminder, from a Union Federal address. Carter peered over my shoulder. An hour old. Likely auto-generated when someone checked the box index. Cole's not asleep this morning. Let him be awake, I said. Daylight has chores for him. We moved fast the way old men move when we have more purpose than air. Sam's car hummed past the sycamore flipping coins of light. Jessica sat behind me, hands folded, then unfolded, then still. Tom followed in his own car because control is a habit, not a vice, and sometimes you need to watch it park itself. Union Federal, Maple and 3rd, had the new kind of lobby that tries to smell like a hotel lobby. A polite woman with a badge that didn't match her temperament smiled like a gate with a hinge well-oiled. Carter's card changed the air around us. Sam's name changed the bank manager's posture. We signed the guest registry with ink that refused to smear. The manager retrieved a clipboard, a narrow ledger, a ring of keys that sounded like an old song, and led us past glass and into thick walls, where light turns practical and echoes learn manners. Box? He asked. 1973, I said, and the year hung between us like a photograph with too much to say. He checked the log, pen hovering, then frowned. There's a note. Customer co-key reported missing. Replacement issued 6 months ago with proper documentation. He looked up at me, careful. We require 2 keys. This is normal. Signature card? Carter asked. He slid it out. The card wore my name in my own unflattering penmanship, and beneath it, a crisp, careful script that looked like it had practiced righteousness. J. Hale, Agent, POA, dated the same month. Eleanor underlined, "Do not be brave in the wrong direction." Jessica's breath became a square in the cold air. I didn't, she started, then stopped herself because she has learned a new muscle today. Copy of the POA used? Sam asked. The manager nodded. On file. Good, Carter said. Fetch it and the access log, and stay kind. He disappeared. We stood in concrete silence except for the distant hum of a building that believes in electricity. The manager returned with a pink file folder holding the kind of copies lawyers dream of. Witness lines, notary stamp, a signature that pretended to be mine and made the page wince. Sam didn't touch it until the man set it on a table and stepped back. Chloe photographed every inch with her phone. No flash, no fuss. Then the manager slid a tray into the slot for 1973 and turned the bank's key. I inserted Eleanor's key. It resisted a fraction, then accepted me because brass respects stubbornness. The bolt released with a solid little thunk. The sound you live for if you're a man like me. And the tray's handle came out toward the world, bringing a long, dull box with it that smelled faintly of old paper and carpet glue. Would you like a private room? The manager asked. No, I said. The kitchen is at my house. Here, we do it like people who know what light is for. He nodded, unoffended, and stepped aside. I set the box on the table, ran my fingers along its grain once like a blessing, then lifted the lid. Inside lay the history Eleanor promised, a black notebook with my brother's neat block print, 2 envelopes with our names, and a blue document whose first line read like the kind of sentence that makes a judge sit forward. Writer to trust instrument, successful petition for guardianship. By any beneficiary or agent voids their residual appointment and vests advisory control in David Hale until Jessica Hale's 38th birthday, at which time control passes to Jessica Hale, if capable. The ink had bled a little where Caleb's hand pressed down harder than the paper liked. Jessica whispered it out loud, stopping on 38th like a runner at the line. My birthday is in 5 months. Yes, I said. And that is why men in suits have been in a hurry to rename care. She touched the edge of the writer, then drew her hand back as if not to smudge her own inheritance from its trap. I picked up my envelope. It felt heavier than hers, though paper doesn't play favorites. Ready? I asked. She nodded. We opened them. Inside mine, Caleb's confession in a hand that looked like rain on a window. A timeline that started with the night he asked me for a forgiveness I couldn't yet afford, and ended with a sentence I read twice because love makes a man right clean. Inside hers, Eleanor's voice, funny, bossy, tender in the places where she scolded me for being too proud to ask for directions, telling Jessica what she had always been in this house, wanted on purpose. Jessica's shoulders came down an inch, then another. Tears made her eyes larger, the way windows do when someone opens them. I looked up at the vault door. Metal. Rules. Light pretending to be cold when it is only careful. Count out loud, Eleanor had written. 1, I said. We keep this rider like a life vest. 2, Sam added. We file a notice of it now. 3, Carter said. We add it to APS memo so no one opens a back door today. 4, Jessica said, voice steadying. We go home and read every page without skipping the ugly parts. Cole materialized from a side corridor with a smile that had practiced pity. On his left, a bank security officer already regretting his errands. On his right, a man with a bronze badge, hand near a radio, the posture of someone taught to enter rooms without waking the glass. Mr. Hale, Cole said, voice as smooth as envelopes. I'm going to need you to surrender that rider for safekeeping pending a church-led review. Pastor Whitaker has convened a stewardship panel, so this doesn't become adversarial. Adversarial. He said it like a coffee stain. The vault air was dry and tasted faintly of dust the bank liked to call history. I held the blue-backed rider in my left hand and felt the cheap cardstock grit. Behind me, Jessica went very still. Sam's eyes slid once to the badge, once to the camera tucked into the ceiling corner, then back to Cole's face, as if measuring where the weight wanted to go. Carter stepped half a pace forward, not big enough to be rude, exactly big enough to be useful. Counselor, she said, and she made the word do layoffs. Adult Protective Services has a memo on this file, and Judge Everly signed an order. She tapped the copy Chloe held like a lantern. Encumbering transfers and forbidding ex parte cleverness. Church-led review is not on my agency's list of recognized custodians. Cole never looked at Carter. He aimed the smile at me again, a deliberate end run. Brother David. Careful, I said, and my voice surprised even me with how level it stayed. When you use brother as a tool, it dulls fast. The badge cleared his throat in that official way some men use to forget their names. We've got a report of potential disturbance in a safe deposit area, he offered, neutral as a fence post. Just making sure everyone leaves with what they're supposed to. Perfect, Sam said, warm as a fresh ink pad. He lifted the signed order and held it so the light could read it. Deputy, I'm glad you're here. This is Judge Everly's order from an hour ago. APS memos stapled. Mr. Hale is exactly the person supposed to carry this rider. Anyone who attempts to separate him from it will be inventing a new kind of trouble. The deputy took the paper. His mouth did that small movement men do when words are heavier than they thought. He read twice. Looks clean, he said, nodding toward Carter in the way officers nod to people who carry consequences. Bank security, you good? The guard looked at me the way a man looks at a lever, simple, decisive, liable to move something you can't put back. I'm good if the court is good, he said. My boss likes judges. Cole's smile faltered just a nail width. He recalibrated. Then perhaps, purely for everyone's comfort, we place a photocopy on file and allow the original to be kept at the church until you decide my kitchen table is holy, I said. No. Jessica stepped forward. It was a small step, but it carried 37 years. Mr. Maddox, she said, voice steady without asking permission from her throat. You told me last month that temporary guardianship was a kindness that would make my father grateful. You told me the rider was boilerplate we'd clean up after. You told me Pastor Whitaker had seen this 100 times. Cole turned to her in a practiced pivot. Jessica. May I call you Jessica? Instruments evolve. Language was written by my uncle, she said, tapping the rider gently, in the same hand that asked my father to forgive him before he knew why. It says that if I file a petition, I lose the right you told me I was securing. You needed this page to disappear, so I could keep thinking your rope was ribbon. The deputy coughed into his hand to hide what might have been a laugh. Carter didn't hide hers. She let it turn into a very small, professional smile. Whitaker appeared then, because of course he did, easing around the corner with the talent of a man who can always find a camera. His voice dropped into that careful pastorate that trims syllables so they look like prayers. Children, he said. He loves that plural when it suits him. No one is trying to take anything. We are trying to keep you from drowning in paperwork. Paperwork floats if you don't soak it in secrecy, I said. Pastor, the judge wrote no. The badge just read it. The bank likes it. The only person lobbying against daylight is the man with a sob on his suit. Cole breathed in through his nose like a swimmer about to attempt something he'd pretended all morning was easy. Then I'll state this plainly for the record. The church believes the rider injures the charitable intent of the trust. Intent, Sam replied, gentle as a fall of ash, is what the drafter writes and what the court reads, not the music you add over it. Chloe raised her phone an inch. Also, for your record, the bank's camera has been rolling since you walked into the vault corridor and tried to collect a document from a non-client under color of religion and a security guard you don't employ. Do you want to say more for the jury you'll never meet? Cole's jaw set. Whitaker's eyes found the camera and did the subtle drop that says even he knows when not to audition. The deputy held the order a moment longer, then handed it back to Sam. Mr. Maddox, the deputy said, not unkindly. You're welcome to follow these folks out and file anything you want at the courthouse, but you're not collecting paper from anyone in this vault today. Bank security, let's keep the aisle clear. The guard stepped half aside in a way that did not feel like compromise. Cole smoothed his tie. Brother David, he tried it again. It had lost all its teeth. This makes enemies you don't need. I looked at Jessica. She had unclasped the bracelet in the car, and now, without fanfare, she slid it from her pocket onto the metal lip of the box. The diamonds looked suddenly small, as if light could choose who to work for. No, she said. It gives us teachers we didn't ask for. We'll remember the lesson and decline the class. Whitaker opened his mouth. Closed it. For once, he understood the scripture about letting the day's own trouble be sufficient. We left. The vault door eased back with the weighty sigh old steel gives when it's done something decent. In the lobby, the air smelled like hotel again, and the potted ficus resumed pretending it was a tree. Outside, sun sat honest on Maple and 3rd. Sam held the rider flat with 2 fingers, while Chloe snapped a clean photo under the sky. Clock it, she said. Chain of custody. Out of vault, into daylight, into counsel's folder, into Mr. Hale's fire safe by supper. Count out loud, I said, and we did. On the ride home, Jessica's silence was the kind that builds, not the kind that breaks. She looked out the window where the ordinary city kept doing its ordinary math. School kids with backpacks, a woman arguing with a parking meter, a dog deciding who it would forgive next. Dad, she said finally, I need to tell you why I let them teach me their words. I waited. Age gives you that, the patience to leave space where confession can land. Tom, she said, and even his name was tired. He's not a bad man. He's a scared one. He got into something he called investments. By the time I saw it, it had teeth. Whitaker made it sound like, We could set things right without admitting we'd been wrong. She looked at her hands. I thought I was protecting you and saving us. That's the story he sold. I loved the price tag. Paper doesn't forgive, I said softly. People do. Her eyes stayed on the street. Can you? Count out loud, I reminded her, and she smiled a little through it. We'll try. Back at the house, the lamp remembered its job on the table. We set the writer beneath it. The blue edge glowed like honest sky. Carter left to file the APS addendum with a signature heavy enough to make copy machines tired. Sam called Everly's clerk to lodge the notice. Chloe stood at the sink and drank water with the posture of someone who respects the uses of small mercies. I took Caleb's ledger from the vault box and opened to a page with an old coffee ring that looked like an eclipse. Most entries were neat. Dates, sums, careful arrows where he'd moved weight without pretending it was lighter than it was. Halfway down the page, a line wore a different pressure. Ink darker, hand hurried, as if the writer's pulse had been arguing with the pen. Whitaker Rhett, via TW, 42500, for roof, actual, arrangements, TW. I didn't say it out loud. I didn't have to. Tom was standing in my doorway, trying to look like drywall. Tom stood in my doorway, trying to learn stillness from drywall and failing. His pupils flicked to the writer on the table, then to Caleb's ledger in my hands, then back to the door. As if escape were a math problem with one unknown and 10 ways to get it wrong. Don't, Jessica said, a reflex more than a sentence. He moved anyway. Quick, practiced, the way men move who've trained their bodies to interrupt paper. Fingers out, not for my throat or my wallet, but for the ledger. The one thing here that couldn't be replaced by screenshots or a judge's annoyance. I stepped back without haste. Age teaches you where a lunge ends before it begins. Chloe's voice arrived from the sink, cool as tap water. Thomas Whitaker, she said, not looking up. Before your hand lands, know that page is already photographed, hash stamped, and sitting in 2 clouds and an attorney's inbox that opens on motion. He froze. The ledger hung in the space between us like something sacred and embarrassed to be fought over. The house listened so hard you could hear the lamp hum take a breath. Sit, I told him. I made the word heavy, but not cruel. If you want a story, we'll read one. If you want to steal a story, you'll need a time machine. The copy already left. His hand opened and fell. He sat. Chairs are honest when they are tired of being asked to lie. Jessica took the seat beside him, not touching his sleeve, not touching it. She looked at me and then at the ledger, and for the first time since she could write her name, she waited for me to start reading. I set the book down between us, 1 palm on either side, so the table would understand our weight distribution. The entry glinted under the lamp. Whitaker Rhett, via TW, 42,500, for roof, actual. Arrangements. TW, I said. Tom Whitaker. Tom's jaw tensed, then released like a stubborn jar. It was a loan, he lied on reflex, and then, because some men are tired of hearing themselves lie, he stopped. It was a retainer, he corrected, which fits better and hurts more. To protect the church if certain family facts complicated donations. Arrangements, I read. He stared at the table. Cole's word, not mine. Roof, Jessica repeated, tasting the fake cover. You said the church roof fund was short. Tom flinched. I said a lot of things that spend better than they age. Carter came back through the door with a copy of the APS addendum, damp-inked from the machine. She took in the tableau. Man, book, lamp, girl, and tucked her coat tighter around her shoulders like she meant to trap heat and foolishness alike. We filing confessions now? She asked, almost kind. Tom rubbed his temple. The motion aged him 5 honest years. You want the short? He asked no one in particular. My uncle blessed my entrepreneurial streak. I built a house of cards that looked like a fund. When wind visited, he offered me language to keep it standing. Stewardship, consolidation, temporary, safety. We needed a source to shore up the illusion, while the market remembered how to be generous. Jessica said Dad, and he said Amen, and we all pretended that rhyme was doctrine. "And the 40-2500?" Sam asked, appearing in the doorway with that courthouse smell still on his cuffs. "Roof? Arrangements?" Tom exhaled. A collection of little fires, a donor who wanted out without the social cost, my revolving line that wasn't revolving anymore, a thank you to the man who notarized something he shouldn't and wanted silence to feel like integrity. The word arrangements covers a multitude of sins. "Most of them billable," Chloe murmured. Jessica turned to him. "And me?" Tom swallowed. "You were the bridge. You love the word help. They taught me how to walk across that love without asking if my shoes were clean." The sound my chair made backing up was small and sufficient. I stood and set the ledger upright, open to the page with the eclipse ring. "Tom," I said, "I'm not your judge. That job has a desk downtown. But I am your father-in-law until my daughter says otherwise. I built structures whose only job was to tell the truth about weight. What you've been doing is lying about load limits and calling it ministry." He winced, because engineers are not poetic, and we save metaphor for when we want it to cut. Carter took the ledger gently, the way women who work with custody take anything that can be eaten by fire. "We'll log this," she said. "Mr. Hale keeps it. APS copies the page. Counsel?" She nodded at Sam. "Already sending the entry to Everly's clerk," Sam said, thumbs moving like a piano player's over a steady hymn. "We'll file a supplemental and tender it to the DA's supervisory unit, not because we want punishment, because daylight is hungry." Tom's shoulders slumped. He looked not at me, but at Jessica. "I'm sorry," he said, and you could hear the sentence trying to be bigger than his mouth. "I am. I thought if we hurried, we'd get to the good part before the bad part noticed. I told myself your dad was tired enough to prefer being saved to being asked. I liked the story where I was useful." "You were," she said softly, which surprised all of us. "Just not to the truth." She reached into her pocket, pulled out the bracelet, and set it on the table next to the writer and the ledger. The diamonds made a small clatter that sounded richer than money. "I'm done." "I filed the petition," she said, looking at me, not at Tom. "I'll withdraw it on the record this afternoon. I'll say the words in the room where words matter. And I'll tell the judge who taught me how to pronounce temporary order." I nodded. Somewhere inside my chest, an organ I didn't know had been clenched let go. The house registered it. Pipes softened. The clock remembered how to be ordinary. Tom cleared his throat again, the body's way of asking permission to continue. "What happens to me now?" he asked. "Consequences," Sam said without malice. "Some legal, some human. We'll protect the money you didn't get. The DA will decide what to do with the money you did. As for the church, it will either repent or rebrand. That part isn't yours to fix." Tom nodded, a man who has finally found the first step and hates where it points. We sat like that a moment. 4 people, and a room that had seen worse and better. I closed Caleb's ledger and put my hand on top of it. The paper warmed. Weight traveled safely. Jessica leaned toward me. "Dad," she said, voice low. "I should have brought you the first lie and asked for the right words. I brought you the 5th and practiced explaining." "You brought me the last before the worst," I said. "That will do." We stood. Carter slid the ledger into a sleeve and handed me back the writer. Chloe texted a photo to a number I didn't recognize, and then to me, captioned with the time and the single word intact. Sam straightened the order copy like a man aligns a compass. At the sink, the kettle chose that moment to hum. Not a whistle, just that shy pre-song that warns water is about to become another thing. Eleanor always loved that sound. "Promise," she'd say, tapping the lid. On impulse that felt like obedience, I took the second envelope, the one with Jessica's name, from the vault box and passed it to her. "Read this where you can forgive us both," I said. "And count out loud if it helps." She nodded and slipped it inside her coat as if it were a small animal that needed warmth. We were gathering our coats when a shadow crossed my front window, another silhouette behind frosted glass. Not a clipboard this time, not a pastor, not a courier. A young man's shape, hat in hand, the hesitation of someone who has practiced the first sentence and nowhere to put the second. The knock, 3, then 2, had a rhythm I knew as well as my own, Caleb's old pattern when he'd forgotten his key. I looked at the writer, then at the ledger, then at the door in whose glass I could see my own face, sharpened by mourning. "Don't open," Sam began, reflexively protective. I smiled. "Sometimes," I said, walking toward the hinge. "You have to." I turned the knob and let in a face I'd never seen that had been walking toward me for 37 years, our blood with a stranger's haircut, and a simple sentence that unstitched and re-sewed the whole story in 10 words. "Mr. Hale," he said, eyes bright and terrified. "I think I'm Caleb's son." He stood on my threshold the way people stand on a dock their first time, solid ground underfoot, deep water everywhere else. Late 20s maybe, thrift store jacket pressed honest, jaw too tense for the hour. In his right hand, a small envelope. In his left, a ring on a chain, brass rubbed near smooth where thumb met time. His eyes, Caleb's color, Eleanor's attention. "Mr. Hale," he said again, steadier now. "I think I'm Caleb's son. I'm not here for anything but the truth." "Then you came to a house that's been practicing," I said. I stepped aside. "Come in." He crossed the line the way a careful man enters a church, hat in hand, gaze learning the room. The lamp offered him the same light it gives liars and saints. Carter angled so he could see her badge without having it pressed on him. Sam softened his posture the way good counsel does when a story arrives unannounced. Chloe drifted toward the corner, attention like a camera without the red light. Jessica straightened, pulled a tissue from her pocket, then didn't hand it, because sometimes dignity is not needing to be managed. "I'm David," I told him. "This is my daughter, Jessica. That's Sam, counsel. Chloe, the one who catches wires. Carter, the one who keeps wolves from calling themselves shepherds." "Evan," he offered. "Evan Ruiz." The last name was new music over an old melody. He set the ring carefully on the table. "My mother kept this in a coffee can in the back of the pantry. Said it belonged to the man who named me after a poet because he thought poets keep the truth company. She died in April. I found the can cleaning. There was this." He touched the chain once. "And a letter." He extended the envelope. Eleanor's handwriting again. Every letter, a little marching soldier. "For David, if a boy brings you Caleb's ring." My chest felt like a bell struck once. Clean. I slid my thumb under the flap and pulled out 2 sheets, creased, patient. "David, if Caleb's son finds you, meet him with a chair before you meet him with a ledger. Blood is not a bill. He doesn't owe us or earn from us by existing. Give him a meal. Give him the story whole. Then tell him there is paper that will one day ask him to be brave without becoming hungry. If he needs help, that isn't money. Give it until you're proud. If he asks for money, make him read the writer out loud first. E." Underneath, another note, older ink, Caleb's block letters pressed hard near the margin. If he shows, I was coward and grateful both. Teach him the part of my name I liked best. Evan watched my face read both. He didn't hurry. His hands rested flat on his knees. "Do you know?" Jessica began, then stopped, choosing the lane where questions are bridges, not traps. How did you— My mother was a nurse, he said. Not at the hospital where your photo was taken. She was in step down a floor below. She met a man who brought flowers twice a week to a woman with fog behind her eyes. He made jokes that weren't jokes about forgiveness. When the woman went home with a baby, he looked finished and empty at once. He glanced at the ring. He left this on our counter one night after falling asleep on our sofa. Mom said he was a storm that apologized after every thunderclap. Caleb, I said, and the name warmed the room instead of cooling it. I grew up with one rule about the ring, Evan went on. If you take it, you have to know the story. I didn't take it. I waited. Then April came, and I hated waiting. He looked at me. I don't want a piece of anything. I want to say the name that belongs in my mouth without feeling like a thief. You're not, I said. You're a map that arrived late. Tom hovered at the kitchen doorway, hands in his pockets, learning quiet the way men do when the room is better without them. Carter stepped 2 inches nearer the lamp, then stopped herself. Habit wants documentation, but Mercy wants a chair. Sit, I told Evan. We'll do both. Chair first. I poured him tea, the kitchen's answer to every century. He sipped the way people sip in houses that smell like lemon and paper. It righted him. Jessica slid the plate of Eleanor's shortbread across without a speech. Sharing a rectangle of sugar has ended wars on smaller tables. Here's the ledger part, I said, laying the rider flat where he could see it and not feel summoned by it. This paper says money will be told where to go by Jessica on her 38th, unless she acts before then to make the court parent me without need. It also says anyone who tries to parent me for convenience loses their hand on the wheel. I tapped the blue. That language matters because some men thought they could feed their fears by calling them stewardship. You're not furniture in that room. You're family at this table. Evan looked at the writer, then at Jessica. I don't want to take you can't take what I don't owe you and you don't owe me, she said, fast enough to be brave, slow enough to be kind. We can share the name without breaking the ledger. He nodded, eyes shining in that humiliating way eyes do when they finally find honest nouns. He touched the ring again. What did he like best about his name? He asked me. Caleb? I smiled. Stubbornness dressed as loyalty. Loyalty dressed as stubbornness. He built bad decisions with good tools and then laughed himself into trying again the right way. I pushed the shortbread closer. He loved lemon. Evan laughed once. It sounded like something choosing to live. Sam cleared his throat in a way that meant, allow me to be the boring adult. There is a practical path, he said. We record your existence in a way that doesn't turn you into prey for Cole. A simple affidavit of identity. Sealed. If when Jessica's 38 comes, you both agree words should move a little differently, we file those words then. No one moves today. Everyone breathes. Works for me, Evan said quickly, then looked at me to see if the house agreed. It does, I said. And for what it's worth, whatever help you need that isn't money, you ask out loud. Tools, advice, a sofa that knows how to hold silence. Money, we'll make wait its turn until it can't call itself love. He nodded. I can work with that order. Carter jotted a note. Affidavit, sealed. APS to annotate file. Non-litigant kin present. She underlined present twice. Present is the only tense that saves families. Chloe slid him a glass of water. Do you have anyone Whitaker could reach if he wanted to? Shepherd you? She asked. Evan's face shuddered and reopened. He left a voicemail at my mother's old number yesterday, he admitted. Said legacies need light. I thought that meant yes. I didn't know it meant bring us your name so we can spend it. I didn't call back. Good, Chloe said. If he calls again, don't pick up. Forward to us. We'll put him on a diet of silence." We all sat, the old, the almost broken, the newly arrived, and let the room absorb us. Outside, the sycamore flipped its bright coins and lost none of them. The house felt taller. Some rooms grow when the right truth sit down. "Tell me about him," Evan asked finally, shy like a boy asking a teacher to explain how a bridge doesn't fall. Not the ledger part, the man. So I did. I told him about the summer Caleb broke our father's mower and invented a better one from anger and bicycle parts. About the night he called me from the roadside to say he'd said something unforgivable and wanted to learn the words for repair. About the way he'd tickle babies until they hiccuped, then burp them like an apology. About the time he and Eleanor danced in the kitchen to a radio with bad reception and made joy sound like a station worth finding. Evan laughed and cried like they were the same verb. Jessica chimed in with the memory of a secret handshake Caleb made for her, and then promptly forgot. So she taught it back to him every Sunday like grace. Tom added one small story about a toolbox Caleb gifted him the year he married. A toolbox Tom had pawned last winter and now vowed to buy back with whatever penance cost. We circled the table like men around a fire in winter, hands out, not to take, but to warm. At last, Evan lifted the ring and chain. "I don't know if I should keep this," he said. "Feels like stealing from a story already told." "Stories like this don't end," I answered. "They add chairs." He held the ring a beat longer, then slipped it back over his head. The brass glinted like old honey. He looked right at me, unafraid. "I'd like to come back," he said. "Good," I said. "Come hungry." We stood. The kettle, not wanting to be left out of the scene, gave its small, satisfied sigh. Jessica reached for her coat, then didn't. She turned to Evan and said, "I have something for you." Not money. She went to her room and returned with a photograph. Eleanor in that garden hat, holding infant Jessica in a towel shaped like a bear. The sky behind them did the thing sky does when it decides to bless without words. "Borrow," she told him. "Bring it back when you've memorized the light." He held it like a candle. Sam checked his watch. "We still have a church to disappoint and a DA to brief," he said. But I think the day just learned its manners. I opened the door. Sun had shifted to late afternoon gold, the kind that forgives any room willing to be honest. Evan stepped onto the porch, then turned back, and surprised me. He hugged me quick, hard, true, the way men hug when they don't want to cry on an oak floor. "Thank you for the chair," he said. "Thank you for the name," I answered. He left with his ring and a photograph and, if I'm any judge of burdens, a lighter set of pockets. I closed the door and leaned against its old wood. Not tired, exactly. Used well. Jessica stood at the table with the writer under her palm, as if to keep the sky from running away. Tom sat with his head in his hands, as if the truth had finally found a seat in him. Carter scribbled something that looked suspiciously like a prayer disguised as a note. Chloe took one picture of the room. No faces, just lamp, ledger, ring shadow, then put her phone down like a person with manners. I looked at the envelope that had started our day, at Eleanor's bossy script, at the key that had turned old brass with ease. I heard her voice at my shoulder. "Forgive, but count out loud while you do it." 1, I said, mostly to myself. "We keep our money honest." 2, Jessica added. "We keep our names clean." 3, Carter said. "We keep our doors learned." 4, Sam finished. "We keep our story ours." Whitaker came alone at dusk, coat folded over one arm like penance that hadn't learned its verbs. No entourage, no smile lacquered for cameras. He stood on my porch and looked smaller than his sermons. 5 minutes, he said. To pray. 4, I answered, stepping aside. I charge interest on borrowed time. I set the blue-backed writer on the table between us, next to Caleb's ledger and the empty saucer where Evan's ring had rested. Use names when you say Amen. All of them. He sat like a man who knows chairs can tell the truth about posture. Jessica stayed in the doorway. Tom chose the far edge of the room. Carter leaned where the lamp could see her. Sam and Chloe occupied the ordinary. One with a legal pad, the other with a glass of water, because ordinary is what closes a day. Whitaker folded his hands and closed his eyes. When he spoke, the first syllables were habit. Then something snagged, and habit tore. A neat, quiet rip. God, he began, voice low. For what I called stewardship when it was fear. He swallowed. For David, for Jessica, for Tom, for Evan, for Caleb, who trusted men in collars, for Marla, whom I visited with intention made to look like obedience, for every elder whose fatigue I named as permission, for the hands I taught to move money while I sang about mercy. He opened his eyes and looked at the writer. And for this page, which I tried to steal by calling it a blessing. Silence answered better than any liturgy. He breathed out, a long, honest sound. Amen. Good, I said. Now the other prayer. He blinked. Restitution, Carter said gently. It's the one that finishes the first. He nodded, as if a door he had used for years had just explained what doors were for. We'll open the books, he said, hands flat on his knees. I'll resign the chair I shouldn't have held. I'll tell the DA which roofs we never fixed. I'll step back until the flock remembers its own legs. Say Cole's name, Jessica said quietly. Whitaker's mouth tightened, then softened. Maddox, he said, plain. I discipled him in shortcuts and called them Providence. I'll say his name under oath. I poured him tea because houses like mine believe simple hospitality can do complicated work. He wrapped his hands around the cup like heat might teach him to carry something without dropping it. He tried a smile and let it be only half successful. I thought urgency was love, he said, watching steam lift. It is when homes burn. It isn't when elders read. I knew that. I preached that. Then fear offered me a pulpit with no stairs. I stepped up. Step down, I said. Walk. He nodded, stood, and, because the world is sometimes better than we deserve, thanked Jessica before he left. On the porch, he turned back, bareheaded, smaller than the doctrine he'd worn. Brother David, he said, the word different in his mouth now. If I write a letter to your wife, will you place it where she can't be bothered by it? In the garden, I said, between the mint and the lemon. Letters grow better there. He went. The house exhaled the day. Paper, heat, sorrow, mercy, out the old vents the way a choir sighs after a long hymn. We did our work and our washing up. Jessica called Everly's clerk and withdrew the petition in a voice that belonged to the girl who used to memorize the constellations from our back step and quiz me until we both knew their names. Tom wrote 3 sentences to the DA that will make him poorer and freer. Carter filed the APS addendum with a notation that read, simply, context repaired, capacity intact. Sam finished the notice on the writer and snapped the fire safe shut with a sound Eleanor used to call promise. Chloe texted Evan a photo of the shortbread recipe in Eleanor's hand and the caption Open Door Protocol. I walked the teapot bug to the trash and gave it a small eulogy. Then I stood a long time at the sink, because a man should honor a day that holds this much weight and still doesn't split. Jessica joined me. I'll read Mom's letter tonight, she said, tapping the envelope inside her coat. Aloud, counting. I'll listen from my room, I said, quietly. We are learning new rituals that fit in old rooms. When it was finally only me and the clock, I took a pen and wrote a list on the back of an old electric bill, because some lists should be paid forward. Call Evan on Sundays. Ask about his work and his poems. Never lead with money. Keep tea stocked and the lamp aimed true. Teach Tom how to repair what doesn't want to be. Begin with hinges. Mail Marla a thank you with enough in it to honor her lateness and her courage. Plant another mint by Eleanor Stone and a lemon in a pot by the steps. Forgiveness likes company. File everything. Sleep. File again. Outside, the sycamore flipped its coins until moonlight announced it was time to put them back. I placed Caleb's ledger in the fire safe in front of the writer and closed the door. Not to hide anything, but to teach the paper what it means to be kept. Then I sat at the table, our old altar of coffee rings and homework and bills, and looked at the door where the hook scene had first asked for my attention. I thought about Sam's caution, Carter's steady, Chloe's clever, Whitaker's fallen pulpit, Tom's upturned pockets, Evan's ring, Jessica's hands resting on blue paper like a benediction. Age teaches you the difference between drama and consequence. Drama shouts at doors. Consequence changes how you open them. If you've been listening, you already know the lesson. It isn't complicated. It never was. Guard your house without making it a fortress. Trust slowly, then beautifully. Count out loud while you forgive. Keep water still enough to reflect what leans. And when someone knocks with a prayer in one hand and a form in the other, let the prayer in first, and make the form wait on the porch until daylight can read it. I rose, turned off the lamp, and let the dark tell the truth. Old houses love. We made it through. Morning will find us with fewer secrets and better names. If this story left you holding your own door a little tighter and a little kinder, share it with the one person who needs a chair at your table. And if you need words for your next day, borrow mine until yours arrive. Her phone buzzed against the wood, too loud in the small quiet. She didn't touch it. The screen flashed one word I was never meant to see. Maddox.